I said, I got to call 911, on that. I got up and I started dialing, and I dialed 911. And that's when the voice came and said, you need to go back. You need to go back and pray with him.
This is Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. Those moments when heaven and earth collide. And we see God. We see his hand reaching out to us, inviting us into a deeper relationship. And he does that through a variety of ways. Could be little or big God incidents, divine interventions, encounters with angels. We have that in this episode. Encounters with Angels. Welcome. I am your host, Trapper Jack. Over the Christmas season, there are always two movies that we watch, guaranteed. One is Elf. Love Elf. Funny movie. And the other is It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart. What a great movie. I've probably seen that movie more than any other movie in my entire life because I've watched it every year for so long. And you would think after watching a movie that many times, I would be able to train my body to turn off the tear ducts, but it just gets me every time. Every time it gets me. It's a wonderful life. It's a wonderful movie. Jimmy Stewart, of course, being George Bailey, and George is in trouble and up there. I think it's the first scene where you got those stars talking to each other, those heavenly beings, right? Oh, there's someone on earth with a problem. It's George Bailey. Let's send him some help. Clarence, AS2. Angel second class. No wings. Poor guy. No wings. He's got to go get his wings, right? During the Blind Faith Live episodes, we used to talk about how angels are like the brain cells of God. God's brain cells, that connected. The mind of God being shared directly, completely, instantaneously with his angels. And they certainly have free will, but they are his brain. I love that. His brain cells, perfectly connected. So when an angel's doing something, it's God, right? It's God through those angels. So in this episode, we have Larry and Lisa Forrest. Now, Lisa begins the story with the AS2 variety, those angels that are sent to us when we need them, through a prayer. And then we have Larry Forrest, who will give us examples of where he has heard his angel at a critical moment in his life. So let's get underway and start with Lisa Forrest. And it's kind of interesting because she sent me an email as I was producing a couple of weeks ago, the episode where Beth and I had the blowout on the highway. I was mentioning how we had a blowout and AAA was called, and within less than an hour, tow truck appears and the tire is changed and off we go again. And the guy that was sent to help us, his name was Angel. Just a little symbolism there that God is always sending his angels. Well, as I'm producing that, in comes an email from Lisa Forrest talking about her blowout.
Yeah. So, during the summer, this past summer in August, my husband, my daughter, and I were driving to Maryland, and then bang, loud noise. So my husband went out there. Now this is a 36-foot motorhome. These tires are big, and it's an older motorhome. So I said, "Oh my gosh, Larry, I don't know how I can help you. I can't help you with this." And he said, "Just stay inside the motorhome with Carly, our daughter, who has special needs, and said just stay in there and keep safe." So I was nervous and everything. So I went in, I sat at the table inside, put my head down, and I just said a prayer. I said, "Oh God, he needs your help. Please keep him safe, give him strength, give them wisdom on how to do this." And I said, "Oh, if we could only have that kind of power tool that takes those lug nuts off, I said, that would be the perfect thing to have." So I said, and I made sign of cross, finished my prayer. I lift my head up and I'm looking straight out the dash in a motorhome. You can see the windshield. And as I do that, a man walks right in front. I mean, really close to the front of the motorhome. And I said, "Oh my, who's that? What's that?" And I kind of had a feeling going, "Oh, could it be?" And he has that tool to take off the lug nuts in his hand. And I said, "Oh my gosh, it's an answer to the prayer. Oh my gosh." So I was so excited. And then, so I'm there, "Oh, thank you. Thank you." And then it's so hot out, and I bring the waters out, and then I just chat a little bit with him, and I didn't say anything yet. And I come back in, and as I walk, there's 2 stairs on the outside of the motorhome. Then you get 2 stairs once you're inside. So I'm about to step inside, and there on the stair is a miraculous medal. I don't know. I know we probably had it in the motorhome somewhere, but for it to end up there, and then the sun was shining through, and it shone right on there. I couldn't miss it if I tried. And that was just another confirmation that this was an answered prayer. I picked up that miraculous medal. I said prayers of thank you, thank you, thank you. And then when they were done, I went out and I told that man, I told him how I prayed and how he showed up like in less than a second of me finishing my prayer. And I asked him, and then I put it on Facebook, and I said, people need to kind of know, like what you're saying, people need to know that these things happen, you know?
What did he say?
Oh, he just smiled and said, "Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, thank you." You know, he didn't really say, "Oh, wow, really?" I just said, "No, you were you were in God's plan today. You were the answer to my prayer," and told him how quickly it was and that he showed. And on his end, he said he was driving by, and that's what he does for a living. Is he works for a company, and they send him out to go help stranded motorists with motorhomes or RVs. And he said, "I saw you from across the highway." He said, "I'm off work. I'm no longer working. I'm off of work. I saw you." He says, "I made an illegal turn and got back on the highway and came over to you."
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. So,
wow.
you know, he was just so wonderful, so nice. And then he went on his way, and that was our latest one. It was just so nice, you know.
And you prove my point about this too, and that is that because God knows what we're going to do, we have free will, but He knows what we're going to do. So you have this timeline, and He's looking at the timeline, and He sees that you're going to pray. He sees you're going to, you know what I mean? He sees you're going to pray, so He gets that guy going, turning around, blah, blah, blah. So as soon as you hit the prayer, bam, he's walking right by you, just to dazzle you even more. And then he takes that miraculous medal from wherever you had it in that RV, puts it on the step. That's just, how beautiful.
Yeah.
You're connected, Lisa. You're connected. You're praying. I have a feeling you're praying all the time.
I do. I talk to God all day, every day, you know, just conversation, just like, what should can you help me here? Can you let me know that? Or, what do you think? Your will, and
what else came to mind? What other experiences?
Oh, well, when we were living with my in-laws, this was back in 94. And we were living with my in-laws because we were building a house. So we had nowhere. So we're staying with them for a couple months. So my two oldest daughters are 29 and 27. So the 27th, she was 3 years old at the time. So I said, well, let's go in the backyard of Grammy and Bumpa's backyard. And, I was reading her Bible story, children's Bible story. And we were on this lounger thing. So I'm reading it, and she goes, "Mommy, look at the bird." So I looked, she points up to the sky. So I look up there, and it was the dove of peace. It was so beautiful, so big, just above the treetops, not high up, but above, like, say, a very tall elm tree or oak tree. And it was so detailed in cloud formation that I could see the veins of the feather in the wings, and it had the olive branch and the one eye. So the head was turned to one side, and the olive branch in its mouth. It was so detailed, and we just gasped. I gasped, and I went, "Oh!" And after we stared, it was there for quite a while, and I said, "Oh my goodness, I need to show somebody this. I need to." So I went inside to go get my mother-in-law. Couldn't find her. And then I came out and it was gone. And I said, "Well, Katie, I think that was just a blessing for us, So that was pretty profound that day.
And this cloud, so to speak, was just above the treetops?
Yes, it wasn't high up. Yep.
But it was a cloud, the Holy Spirit, basically. It was the Holy Spirit just above the.
Yeah.
Had something just happened prior to that? Were you praying for something in particular? Was something going on in your life right then? You needed to see that? Because that's huge. You're seeing the veins in the feathers and things like that. It's like that had a reason.
No, it was a pretty happy time. I would say the rosary every day, and I would read these stories, and I'd say, "Oh gosh, it's so nice that people saw things," and then I'd go, "Oh," but this was months prior to, before we even moved out of our old house. I would just think about People have seen things, and that was always just, I always just thought it was kind of neat that people did get to do that.
Yeah.
And
Kind of cool, kind of maybe a cool moment for Katie. How's Katie grown up in all of this? Is she with us?
She's with us. She's great. Yes. And she's still, we just talked about this the other day. We'll sit down and have some chit chat sessions. She's a traveling nurse. And yeah, they're all still, believing in God and going to church and doing their best, towards things. She's not married yet, but she might get there.
Hey, God's timing. God's timing.
Yeah, right. So yeah, she remembers that day too. She remembers, and she just thinks it's pretty special that her and I just had that blessing that day.
And your husband Larry, when the tire thing happened for Larry, anything there? Was it just kind of like, yep, another day with my wife Lisa? Or what was his feedback?
He thanked God too, and my husband has more than I do. He has had many experiences. Oh, it started way back. Oh my gosh. He was at he's a golfer. So he plays, after golf, you have a dinner and then you have a raffle and all that. So he heard that voice, and the voice said, "You have the winner." And so he said, "Really? Okay." So he's at the table with his friends and he says, "Guys, I have the winner. I have the grand prize." He can tell. It's better to hear it from him, what his feelings and thoughts were as he's experiencing this.
Well, then let's have Larry tell the story. Larry Forrest and this voice that he heard. Angel, Larry?
I don't believe it was Jesus talking to me. I believe it was more like a guardian angel or whatever. I don't believe, I'd hate to say that. And he'd, later we meet him and goes, "By the way, that was me." I'd be like, "Oh gosh, I am so sorry. I'm just."
Then he would say, "Can't you tell my voice is deeper? Can't you tell it's the God voice? Come on."
I know. Well, the first time was certainly not a religious moment by any means. It was I was playing a charity golf tournament, and what it's like an audible voice talking to you, that it's like just like if we're talking, but really I realize no one else is hearing it. And what's weird is it's not, you'd think you'd be like nervous or frightened the first time I heard it, and it was more of a soothing, just like your kind of voice. I felt comfortable. It's not I wasn't threatening, just how it came across. And it was, I think maybe the first time just to reach out and say hi was from the standpoint I bought all these tickets, for the last prize was coming up. And I was sitting there with two very good friends of mine and one of my buddies' father-in-laws. And there's probably 200 people. It was the Hamden Country Club golf tournament, and it was probably about 200 people there, and all these tickets that were bought. And the voice said, "You won." And I'm like, and I wasn't talking out loud back, but in your voice, I know it sounds strange, but I kind of like, "I won." And it was like, "Yeah, you're going to win the grand prize." And I'm like, "You're kidding?" And then the voice says, "Here's the ticket number." Now I had about probably 30 tickets in my hand, and I just ripped off the one ticket, and I turned to my friends that were sitting there, and I can be a practical joker sometimes too, and I just turned to them, I go, "This is the winning ticket." And they both started laughing, and I go, I'm being serious, guys." And so, sitting there, in fairness, they're having a couple beers, as I was too, sitting there, and sure enough, they call out the grand prize, and it's that ticket I have in my hand. And I go up, and they're waiting for me they told me afterwards to go into the bathroom and walk by the grand prize thing, thinking I was joking or whatever. And I brought the ticket up, and it was a TV, and I brought the TV back, and the two of them looked at me and didn't say a word for about 2 or 3 minutes. They just stared at me. I said, and I go, "I know it's weird, guys, but I'm telling you." And they're going, how did you know that? And I just said, they know me. I'm not I'm not a crazy guy by any stretch. I'm pretty ordinary. And I just said, I said, the voice told me. And to this day, they still have, they remember it. They just, like I said, their jaw dropped. But that was the first time I actually, and again, it was not anything from a standpoint of, religious by any stretch. It was just, I don't know if it was just to say hi or whatever, just
that was kind of your introduction. That was like your introductory thing. Meanwhile, they think the game is rigged and you're in on it.
Yeah, yeah. Lovely at a charity event on top of it, but it was it was really that was like okay, and I came home and like I said, I came home, told Lisa that, and she's going, "You're kidding me," and that's just you don't tell it to a lot of people because you want people to think you're like really. Yeah.
How old were you then?
I was about 30 years old.
Okay, you're around 60 now. So this has been with you since 30. Now, and I've said this before, obviously with voices, there's got to be a lot of discernment because there are bad guys out there too with voices. They're the fallen angels are out there too, not just the good guys.
Absolutely. You got to know who you're listening to. I agree with that. It was a way for me to trust the voice. I think that it was something, obviously not typical.
Where were you with God at that time?
I've always ever since I was a little boy, I prayed every night. I can't think of a night that I'm sure there's some nights that I haven't prayed, but every night that I can, I pray every night to God. I always felt, I always believed growing up. I changed religions. Originally we grew up Protestant. And I have since I always say don't be afraid to look. The more you look, I think the better it is to check. And Baptist is very similar to Catholic, except for certain things. I actually, ironically, and honestly, I don't know if your faith, but I always thought Catholics were kind of arrogant, is how I perceived them, because they just. In there, kneel, stand up, say these certain prayers. I think you're overthinking with Mary and things like that. That's what I grew up as a Protestant, and I hope I'm not offending anyone. But that's as I knew it as a young man growing up. So I decided to do searching on my own, and then I read, a couple verses and things, and what stereotypes were actually. Stereotypes. I did my own homework, and I also spent 2 years talking with a priest and asking him every question, and he wasn't afraid of the questions, which is nice. So I truly got to learn and understand what the Eucharist was. That's why it's funny if you ever read. I'm not preaching, but one of the things that made me go become Catholic was. I read John 6.
About the Eucharist. It's about the Eucharist, yeah.
That's exactly it. And actually, ironically, it's 1 through 66 that you can read. But it's ironic that part is when they turned from Jesus, on that actual 66. So,
you've got Jesus telling people, unless you eat my flesh and drink my blood, they're like, yeah, we're out of here. Thank you so much. What are you talking about? Right.
Yeah. It's like, listen, we're not into cannibalism. We're out of here. Thank you. And so forth. And,
so you did a complete 180 then about it. And I've said before, in fact, I said just recently on the podcast, God does not care what you are as long he wants a relationship. And then from there, then we're all seekers. Then we're all looking to get as close and to find out as much of the truth as we can and all that. Wherever that takes us, that takes us.
Exactly. And not afraid to search. There's nothing, and that you got to be careful. You don't go into, I'm not going to, there's some places that are probably some cultage issues. But the Protestant Baptist religion is, to me, it's the same God, Jesus, and Christ, and everything like that. It's just the Eucharist to me is a little gift that I think is very important.
Okay. So along the way, so you're as a boy, you had this thing that you prayed, and you just
every night,
you always had that connection to God, and I sense there's a goodness about you. There's a niceness about you that we can hear in your voice. We hear that.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know how you got through your teens and especially 20s. 20s are tough on guys. Teens and 20s are tough. We're all in that guy mode where, we're discovering who we are. All that.
You know how you always do the right things. You're dating different girls and so forth. I certainly wasn't the perfect angel by any stretch.
Were you married at 30?
I actually got married at 29.
Okay, so with Lisa.
Yeah, correct. So
Okay.
I had my single life, if you know what I mean. I
Okay.
was,
Okay, so let's move on to the next time something like that happened. Did it start and just kind of stay, or what? Or was there a gap? What happened?
the one, the tough time I had was, it was 2003, and on my way into work, I'd always go by my brother's house, and my brother was one of the best people you ever meet. Just a big, huge guy. He's about over 300 pounds, about right around 5'11", but just a wonderful guy, great uncle to my daughters and to all his other nephews and nieces, and he, I'd always go by his house. We were particularly close. We played sports together growing up and so forth. I could tell you stories about him. Just the kind of, just a big bear, a lovable, loving guy. And he had become a teacher later in life, which is great. And the kids all loved him and so forth. And so, anyways, bottom line is, I just wanted you to kind of know him a little bit. Just a great guy. And every morning I would drive by his house, and I'd always look to the right just to look at his house before I was on my way to work. And he always, being a teacher, he would always be gone. His green truck would be long gone before I ever went by. So one particular day, I'm looking and I happen to see it, and it was a Monday, and I see the truck there, and I'm like, wow, that's weird. He should be gone by now. So I circled back and drove there, and I'm knocking on the door, and I couldn't get in. So I went around the back of the house, and panic started to set in, because it's like, he's not answering. I know he has to be home. His truck's there. And that's when I smashed in the kitchen door. And I went across. I went by. I'm sorry, I'm just trying to get back here. So I passed, running by through the kitchen, and I turned to my right, and I saw him on the couch, and he was sitting there. It was, he had passed away, and his hands were down by his side, and he was sitting there. He was, I know he had been gone, and I immediately dropped to my knees to pray with him. And so I'm sitting there and just praying, and I'm praying for him to be in heaven. And I realized, I got up and I said, I got to call 911, on that. I got up and I started dialing, and I dialed 911. And that's when the voice came and said, you need to go back. I'm sorry. You need to go back and pray with him.
It's okay, buddy. I mean, this is hard. This is brother stuff.
Yeah, I apologize. So
don't.
So I went back. So I hung up the phone, and I went back, and I was praying. And while I was praying that whole time, it's hard to explain, but I sensed like there's so many people really around me at that time. But just the voice that just told me, pray with him. And then I prayed for help on what to do with him and so forth, for just so many things going through your head. And then the phone kept ringing and ringing, and it was 911 calling me back. And so I got off my knees and got back from him, and they asked, hey, we got to come there and so forth. And they're coming, and they sent people. But I went back when I was praying with him. When I opened my eyes, he had the miraculous Mary was around on his neck, and Mary blew up into my face, the metal, and I closed my eyes, and I opened up again, and it came right back into me.
Now, the miraculous medal, generally worn by Catholics, but not always.
Yeah.
And on one side is Mary.
Yeah.
But when you say it blew up into your face, would you mean it moved?
It looked like it magnified. It became like the size of, how small they are. And then it kind of came to the size of about like 9 inches across in front of my face and then back down. It was just, I know it sounds crazy, but it was like
you were having something was going on. You're having a supernatural event right there,
and it did it twice.
Let's go back. You're there with Kenny.
Yep.
You're about to make your 911 call, or you do, and you get this voice saying you got to go back. Now, what do you think that was about? Why?
That was definitely, and I felt my guardian angel. I needed to pray with him. Praying was way more important than the 911
But
call.
why then? See, I think most of us don't understand how critical that moment is or could be.
Again, when I went right when I saw him, I went right down to pray, because it just. There was nothing else that seemed more important to me at that point. And I went right down and immediately went there and prayed. And I honestly, I'm talking to you and I'm trusting. I was not alone. I knew there were people there, spiritually, whatever. I was not alone. And I felt that people were praying with me.
Was there something, do you think, that just wasn't done yet? You know what I mean? It's like, why did you need to pray? Why, do you have a sense of that?
I felt like just especially when you pass prayers to get to heaven, I believe that it felt like it was those prayers meant the most at that point for him to move forward, I think, to heaven. I mean, it was definitely, there was no doubt in my mind that it was for him spiritually to help cross, to heaven. Because when I went, you know how you're praying, all of a sudden your mind just starts going all different places. And I sit there and I go, oh my God, I haven't called 911. It's like, the stupid, you got to call 911. So I get up and I'll never forget it because right when I dialed it, 911, I'm about to talk on it. And the voice said, you need to go back and pray with him.
I think that's an incredible message for all of us, that when people pass, don't stop, start. You know what I mean? That sometimes that there was something so critical about you praying for your brother right then. Mm-hmm. I think there's a huge lesson in that. And I think you're right. I think you kind of gave him a boost into heaven. I do.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. And it was like, it wasn't a mean, the voice, it's just saying you need to go back. And it was just matter of fact, not and it was like, I went immediately back. And like I said, I really think it was really important.
The Hail Mary prayer, pray for us now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
Yeah.
It's an important time. It's a very important time.
Yeah.
Wow. That's huge. That's huge. I think that's huge, Larry. I think it's huge.
Yeah. Like I said, there was no ifs, ands, or buts. It was get back. And so it was. And I did, like I said, then all of a sudden I come out of it because I hear the phone just ringing off the hook, that's when I realized 911 was calling back.
This is Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. More with Larry Forrest coming up. I was reading where there are something like more than 250 references to angels in the Bible. So they had no trouble putting those stories in the Bible. No one was thinking, what will people think? What will they think? And as opposed to now where it's, what will people think if people know? I'm hearing a voice. I'm seeing. Talked to so many people who've had experiences with angels in these Touched by Heaven episodes. And that's why we do Touched by Heaven. The whole purpose is to showcase how everything God was doing 2,000 plus years ago, he is still doing today. That's what Touched by Heaven is all about. And that's what you are supporting by helping us out through Patreon. Your monthly contributions help us do what we do. This is what we do. This is what Beth and I do. Touched by Heaven and a number of other things that are just reaching out with, look what God is doing today. It's wonderful to hear about all those wonderful things he did a couple of thousand years ago, but he's pretty active right now through angels and divine interventions and visions and prophetic dreams. And there are some stories coming in the pipeline that are just going to knock you out how everything God was doing 2,000 years ago and beyond, he is still doing today. So that's why we do this. And that's why we ask for your support to keep that word going out. And thank you, new disciples. The $12 people. Disciples, 12, seem to be a good connection there. I thank you. If you want to just pick a number, you can pick any number you want for a monthly contribution, whether it's $1 or $5 or $10 or $20 or $50 or whatever it is you want to make it. But I just said, if this is resonating with you, and you just want to give me a nod of I'm with you, keep doing what you're doing, 12 is a good number. $12 a month. It all adds up, and it helps us tremendously. It really does. So thank you. How do you do that? You can go to this episode 39, here at touchedbyheaven.net, touchedbyheaven.net, and just click the Patreon tab, or you can go to Patreon directly, patreon.com, and search for Trapper Jack and do it there. But thank you again for helping us out as we get the word out through Touched by Heaven, everyday encounters with God. Thank you. And now back to Lisa and Larry Forrest, and we continue with Larry's next experience at a time where, not unlike George Bailey, he was crying out for help.
After the funeral, it's, maybe 2 weeks, I was sitting in the chair. I had just, the funeral had gone by and people have taken things that they needed, and the house is pretty, I was getting to the point where we're going to be having to sell it, obviously. And I sat in the couch directly across from where Kenny, and all of a sudden it just hit me like a ton of bricks. It was like, the reality of, I lost my brother. And so I just sat there and I just said, it just really hit heavy in my heart. And I just said, I go, God, I said, I need you right now. I'm hurting. And he goes, and the voice said to me, goes, okay, stand up. I'm like, oh, okay. So I stood up, and I know this sounds crazy, and I swear, I prayed and tell you this is exactly how it played out. So I stood up, said, go walk down the hall. Just as clear as that. I go, okay. I'm walking down the hall. And my brother had set up the back bedroom bunk beds I have 4 daughters. And they used to do a sleepover there, Uncle Kenny's place. You'd let them stay up, watch movies, have popcorn, doing all the things uncles are supposed to, I guess. So I walk in there and it says, go to the computer. So I go to the computer. And it goes, turn it on. I turn it on. And I barely, this is 2003. So I'm not great at computers now, never mind back then. And it says double click a folder. So I hit a double click on the folder. And this folder opened up, and Kenny's face was like all these little faces all over the computer screen. And I started laughing. And I go, oh, thank you. I thought that was it. And the voice actually laughed and said, no, double click the faces. And I double clicked the face. I actually still have it. Said, hi, Larry. Hi. And Lisa, I just want to tell you I love you guys very much. And I jumped up and I was dancing around that room. I couldn't have been. I looked like a fool, but I was dancing all over the room. So,
do you think you were was he going to send that to you, or was he, what was that?
Kenny's a funny kid. He's just a funny guy. He was older than me. And what he did was he was just practicing doing videos, and he never sent them out. And there were different ones on there. There were probably about, I think, 12. I actually could play it if you want. I could think Ken
calling you from Kenland over here.
Hold on, I'm sorry. See,
I love you very much. I love you. Do you understand me? I love you. I love you, Larry. I love you, Lisa. I love you, Kelly. I love you, Katie. I love you, Carly.
Those are my daughters.
Cody. And I just wanted to tell you I love you and I miss you so much. I really do. You understand me what I'm talking to you about? Do you understand what I'm talking to you about? It's what I'm trying to tell you.
So this is what I'm getting,
I miss you and I love you very much. I hope all you girls are doing great in school. And take it easy. Goodbye.
When did he become Australian?
I know. Just he's a funny guy. But but can you imagine that? That's what I get.
Oh, I would have been dancing too. That is so awesome. That is so awesome.
And it was like you said. I had no idea. Obviously that was there, and it was the whole thing. And it was such a neat. No ifs, ands, or buts. What happened?
I also love the fact that the angel was laughing, like, "No, that's not it. That's not it. That's it." No, but they have senses of humor too. You know, it's like, oh no, there's more.
Yeah, it was pretty funny. So that was the. It was I was hurting and in the voice, like I said, I feel it was an angel and just kind of helped me out big time there. And I wasn't so hurting after that. I was pretty happy. People go like, "Gosh, I don't know if I believe," and stuff like that. I said, "How could I not believe?" I just reached out, and I asked. I needed help. I was hurting.
What a merciful God we have. And I've said it before too. We've mentioned before how those who have absolutely none of this in their lives but still believe have the greatest faith of all. They are light years above all of us. To believe, to be totally in and not have these experiences are light years ahead of all of us in faith.
Totally.
A person doesn't have these experiences without being a good person, Larry. You're obviously a good person.
Well,
and my hunch is that you're also a forgiving person.
Well, I pray people forgive me, so I better be same thing back, right? So
and those are the keys. I think those are the huge keys for anybody who wants to experience more of God, and that can be through angels or a variety of different ways. I think as long as we keep taking those steps of loving everybody and forgiving everybody and following the Spirit where it takes us, I just think the more we step towards Him, the more He responds in what I call conversations. I mean, you're literally getting conversations, but I think these conversations, I think we can encourage them to happen more and more when we keep God in the room, and He's just always there. Then we're going to see Him. Yeah. We're going to see Him.
Yeah. I agree.
Why you? That's the question always. Why you?
Yeah.
Do you know? Do you know why?
I really don't. I was hurting, and I think it was just like, okay, we'll give you a little something to help you get over the bump here, because you're obviously, not that other people haven't been hurting way more than me. Maybe you just felt I was pathetic and he needed the help or whatever. I don't know, but it was such a blessing.
How do you keep your ego in check?
Oh my gosh, it's so because exactly the whole point is the matter is no one is worth any more than anyone. It's like, and actually, if I was stronger, I wouldn't have needed that. So I don't think it's a strength with the ego with that. I think that was more of a weakness in the sense that I needed it. I don't think it's an ego thing. I think I definitely think it was a weakness that I needed it. So,
so you treat it with humility, which is the key. Also, it's a huge key in all of this.
Oh yeah, I really believe that. Like you said, God, the fact I think it's the people that don't need it, are actually stronger. You know what I mean? If the reality be, that it's so I don't see it as a strength. I think it's a weakness, but I'll take it at those particular moments. I'm going to take. I'm pretty
all
grateful.
All of us would take it. All of us would take it. Larry Forrest here on Touched by Heaven, and he's got more stories. You want to hear more stories? Come back next week, part 2. Larry and Lisa sharing more of these encounters and lessons. There are so many lessons. I just think we can learn a lot from these two because of how they live their lives, how they've raised their children, just certain aspects of how they try to align themselves with God, which invites more encounters, more experiences, experiencing more of God. So if you're interested in experiencing more, some how-tos, I think you'll really enjoy next week's episode as well. So thank you for being with us again this week. Thank you for subscribing to this podcast in whatever app you're in. On your iPhone, you got a podcast app. Android, you got podcast apps. On your computer, however you're doing it, just make sure you subscribe so the podcast is waiting for you next week. Okay? Thank you again for your help financially through Patreon. Go to episode 39. There's a link there here at touchedbyheaven.net, a link to Patreon. You can do it that way, or go to Patreon directly, patreon.com. Search for Trapper Jack, and there you go. And you can help us out whatever amount you say. We have our disciple number of being $12 a month. We thank you whatever amount it is, but thank you so much for helping us out and listening and joining us every week and understanding that everything God was doing 2,000 plus years ago, he is still doing today. And we'll prove it again next week here on Touched by Heaven. Everyday encounters with God. I'm Trapper Jack.